Okay. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Congresswoman Becca Balint to our virtual town hall here today with Emerge Vermont alums, sustainers, and cabinet members. Becca is one of our most popular trainers. She comes, I don't know how she does it, but she makes time every single year to spend time with the Emerge Vermont trainees for a session on authentic leadership. And it has always been the highlight of the training. And we are all here in Vermont watching you, Becca, and pulling for you in every way we can. And I'm so thrilled that you're here. I suggest, folks, that you switch your view to speaker. And I'm also going to attempt to spotlight. Let's see if I can do this. Spotlight Becca. I did it.
Hey, nice job. Look at those mad skills.
Oh my gosh, this is so much work. So, Becca, welcome,
Thank
and
you.
we'll get started. And I'll be keeping a timer so when we can switch over to audience questions.
Perfect. And very happy to be here. I know, because I talk to a lot, not just Vermonters, but people across the country. I know people are feeling very anxious. There's also a lot of fear and rage. And I like to do these events so people can also see me and see that I am actually okay, because people are really worried about me. And although my mother says I'm losing weight, I'm not. Okay, I weigh the same amount I weighed 6 months ago. I'm not wasting away. I am taking good care of myself because I know that's the only way that I can do this work on behalf of all of you. And I know that we'll talk about that more later, because I know there's a question about how do you, take care of yourself and stay focused. So look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You know, things aren't good. They're not. But it's not all bad. It's not all dark. And I find bright lights every single day in Congress when I look at the work that is happening, not just among my colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle, but there's just like a few little bright spots across the aisle this week. Really looking carefully at what Thomas Massie is doing on the Republican side. He's someone that I've gotten to know through the Judiciary Committee. It matters that he's standing up to Trump. It matters that he is sticking his neck out. I get so much encouragement from watching what Vermonters are doing to take care of each other. And that's no small thing, because right now, people need to feel seen, they need to feel acknowledged, and they need to feel that they're not alone. So I'm going to say things at the top that I know that you know, but I'm just reminding you. We are human beings who are hardwired for connection. Unless you are a sociopath, and I don't say that in a joking way, unless you are a clinical sociopath, you are hardwired for connection. You need to be in connection with other people, and not just in these finite times that we set aside, like now I'm going to this event, now I'm calling a friend. It is throughout the day. We need to stay in connection with one another. And from where I sit in Congress, I see that as something that was atrophying, was falling apart. We were losing those skills even before the pandemic. Pandemic made it worse. We're still very much in a fight or flight mode constantly. And so we are having that fight or flight trigger driving us, and it is driving up our cortisol response. That is what's happening. We feel under threat. We feel under attack. That's what's happening for each of us as we are watching the news, as we are watching social media. And I am becoming much more aware of my role in how do I use my position to educate, inform, give people the information that they need in a timely manner, and do as much as I can not to drive that cortisol response in all of you, because it's not healthy for us. We don't do good decision making that way. And so I want to give you all permission at the top. It is okay to turn off your phone. It's okay to turn away from the news sometimes. You do not need to be glued to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, okay? It isn't giving you the space that you need to be able to actually take action. And so I'm in politics. I have to know what's happening. But even when I'm in committee, the phone is going face down. I am not engaging constantly with what's happening at the White House or what's happening in the Senate or even what's happening in the committee room next to mine. I am being fully present in what I'm doing in that moment. And because of that, I'm not getting burnt out. Okay, so I had a woman the other day in Vermont at an event, and she said, I feel like I can't sleep. I feel like I don't know what to do with myself. I can't turn away from all the posts and all the memes. And I said, I am giving you permission as someone who's in politics right now to unplug for a little while. Set parameters for yourself. Watching in the morning or watching in the afternoon, not watching right before you go to bed, because there's a lot you can't control, but hopefully by the end of this conversation, we'll think about where you can have agency. Because when we feel we don't have agency, that is when the depression and anxiety sets in earnest. And this is a strategy from this administration to get us to be overwhelmed, to throw up our hands up, to say there's nothing we can do. So we're not going to give in to that. So for those of you who don't know the details of where I serve in Congress, I serve on the Budget Committee, which is going to be in the hot seat again in the next couple weeks as we look at a funding deadline approaching once again. And I serve on the Judiciary Committee, which also in the next few weeks, there's going to be a lot of attention on that because we're going to have Kash Patel and AG Pam Bondi coming in, and we're going to be asking questions related to a variety of issues, but also specifically on the Epstein files and the contradictory information that they've been sending out. And I serve in the Progressive Caucus, but I don't just have relationships within the Progressive Caucus. I have strong relationships with people who are in the more moderate wing of the party, which are called the New Dems, and then the folks who are farthest to the right in our caucus called the Blue Dogs. I have good relationships with all of those people. And if there's a top line that I want you to be thinking about as Democrats as we head into the midterms, we have to really turn away from having litmus tests for each other in terms of the coalition that we're building to win the midterms. We are in a 5-alarm fire right now for democracy. Our structures are being tested every single day. And I have really thought more expansively about who my allies are in this moment. And it is, do you believe in the Constitution and the rule of law? Do you believe in the framework that was set out for, making sure that we are guaranteed our due process rights? Are we protecting everyone's First Amendment rights? If you believe in those things, I want you on my team, because that's not what I have on the other side of the aisle right now. But there are disaffected Republicans, there are independents that are thinking about those issues, and we can't write them off. And again, I'll talk about more of that later. I have not lost hope, despite the fact that I'm in the belly of the beast every single day. I am in the viper pit, okay, every day. I show up in committees where people are being absolutely horrible to the American people, but I am not full with despair because I see all of the fighters and the empaths that we have in Congress, in the states, across the country, across our state, And Elaine, I know we're going to talk about Warriors Impasse a little bit later, but there is so much right now to be hopeful for in terms of how people are showing up. And the last thing I think I want to say on this is what you see on the news, what you see on social media is not all that is happening. Okay. You know this, but I want to state the obvious. It's curated. It's curated by those people who are posting those things. It's curated by the organizations. And you get this sense that Democrats in particular are not necessarily fighting back, right? I get told a lot, oh, there's just a few of you fighting back. Absolutely not true. The way I'm fighting back is going to be materially different than the way that my friend Hillary Skolton, who is in a very purple district in Western Michigan, is showing up to fight back. It's going to be really different from the way Marie Gluesenkamp Perez is in a Trump plus, I don't know, 5 seat in Washington. There isn't just one way to fight this battle, and we are not in any position for us to be cleaving people off of our coalition, because in the end, it's a math problem. Anyone who's ever been in leadership in any kind of administrative body will tell you, or legislative body will be, if you don't have the numbers, if you don't have the votes, you don't move legislation. And so we have to win the midterms. That's the next fight collectively for all of us. But I will talk about a couple specific races I would also love people to be focused on. But I want us to reflect on the ways in which we are writing people off, who we feel like can no longer be in our coalition, that has led us to this place where we were shedding voters from the Black community, from the Latino community. We certainly, once again, white women did not show up in force for Kamala Harris. We have lost young men. So it isn't just one group of people. And if we start cleaving all of these people off and say, well, we don't have time for them to listen, then we're going to continue to lose. And I want to win, because my goal is to alleviate suffering. That's what drives me every single day. And I can't do that if I don't have the people in the seats to help me do that. So don't lose hope. I'm going to pivot now to questions. I want to leave as much time as we can, both for Elaine's questions and questions from all of you. But, I start each day, as I live pretty close to the Capitol, and I walk in to the Capitol every day. And the thing that I think about every single day is I am going to be a radiant being. I am going to be somebody who is focused on light and making connections. And I do that throughout my day. I am a radiant being. I'm going to bring us back together. So I need you to think about what is the thing that you have in mind that is going to get you through, because it's by the people, of the people, for the people. We're the ones who are going to make the change. So Elaine, thank you so much for pulling this together, and I'm eager to answer questions.
Awesome. So I hope that I think all of us are sitting here right now with tears in our eyes and hearts in our throats, because we really needed to hear that. And there's some comments popping up on the chat, just these kinds of uplifting comments, in addition to all the factual stuff we're dying to hear, is really important. So thank you, Becca.
You
Um,
got it.
let's start close to home.
Yeah.
I think all of us are really, really worried about Vermont. And so, what are some key issues that Vermonters should be paying attention to in relation to the national climate? And then, where can we focus our energy in coordination with you and the delegation on making sure that Vermont is protected?
Yeah, look, I'm very, very concerned about the number of people who rely on Medicaid and who relied on food assistance. And I met, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, with our partners who do a lot of work with the food bank. The need is incredibly great right now. And the way that the Republicans structured this horrible funding bill is that the worst of it is actually going to take effect after the midterms. They did that so I mean, they're diabolical. They're diabolical, okay? So that they wouldn't pay a price for it at the ballot box. But of course, we're going to continue to hang that around their neck, okay? So I know that Vermont, and I talk with my other small state members, Jill Takuda from Hawaii, who's a very dear friend of mine. I talked to Seth Magaziner down in Rhode Island, and Gabe Amo, Sarah McBride in Delaware. Our states can't fill in the gap. We don't. We don't have the tax base to do that. We don't have the funds to do that. And I know from speaking with legislators, they are super, super stressed about this. I know in speaking with members who are serving on select boards and city councils, they know the reality of the funding. So it's going to be a really challenging time as we, I think you all know I'm the only member from Vermont in the House of Representatives. We've got our 2 Senate partners. We are trying to figure out how are we going to undo some of this harm as it relates to specifically Medicaid and the food banks. There's no easy answer here to this. I want, I think, I want us to understand that it is a time to encourage people who are worried about those supports to be in touch with the various agencies, and you can do it through my office, do it through Bernie's and Peter's offices. Don't assume just because we know these cuts are coming that people shouldn't sign up for this help now. It's not going away now. So they should still do the paperwork and sign up and get the help that they can now. And, I'll be really honest with you. We all have to make the case to wealthy Vermonters that the state can't pick this up. They need to be donating to food shelves and food pantries. And I know we all want to be in the political game. We all want to be like, well, what race can I contribute to? I get that. And yes, we do have to have an eye on those things. And I'll talk about some of those races coming up and what we might be able to do. But in the near term, I do need us to be reaching out to those folks to say, set a little bit of aside, giving monthly to the food banks. Do I feel good about giving you that advice and that stark reality? No, I feel terrible about it. But in this moment, we don't control the House. We don't control the Senate. We don't control the White House. Democrats cannot bring bills to the floor to undo any of this unless we have Republican partners. That's the piece I think a lot of Americans generally don't understand about how the system works. So we're using every tool that we can, but those are my initial reflections on that, Elaine. I don't know if you have a follow-up question on that.
Well, you sort of segued right into the next thing I was going to ask, which is, what is the Congressional Democratic Caucus planning to do to deal with the legislation that Republicans are pushing through? And do you feel like you will get any traction whatsoever on the upcoming issues and legislation that are going to be on the table during this new session?
So look, my Republican colleagues talk a good game and they all fold like a cheap fan. Okay. We saw it yesterday on the floor of the House. You got the Freedom Caucus members who always say that they're going to defy the speaker and they're going to extract something from him. And in the end, and we went through this whole, it's always a show that they're going to actually stand up to him. And in the end, they always fold. And actually, one of my heroes, who you may know, Rosa DeLauro, who was the chair of appropriations. I would say the once and future chair of appropriations. She's the highest ranking member on appropriations right now. On the floor yesterday, she literally called over to from the Democratic side to the Republican side. Just fold already. Save us all the drama so we can catch our flights home because you always fold. So just do it already and be more honest about it. So the only way for us to get them to move is to continue to hound them and to hang this horrible funding bill around their necks. They're underwater right now. We're winning in special elections, okay, since the inauguration. Trump's numbers are underwater. This funding bill that was passed, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, is really, really unpopular. Republicans are trying to backtrack on their support of it. They're not showing up for town halls. So we're taking the fight to them and doing the town halls in their districts. I did one in Glens Falls 2 weeks ago, going to be out in Michigan next week or this coming week, doing that same thing. But no, I don't have faith, Elaine. I don't. So we have to make it hurt. We have to make it hurt. And while doing that, continue to shine a light on the people that are doing the right thing. So as I said, Thomas Massie right now, he not only is standing up on the Epstein files, he also stood up against the funding bill. And that, he was bullied and pressured and tweeted about, and he was like, I don't care. Do whatever you want. I know what is right for me, and I know what's right for my voters back home. And but he's a rare person right now who will buck the trend. But I continue to build those relationships across the aisle as much as I can. And the other bright spot, Elaine, happened a couple days ago. I don't know if you've been following the case of LaMonica MacGyver. She's a colleague of mine from New Jersey who was doing oversight at an ICE facility months ago. And there was a scuffle, and now Pam Bondi is threatening her with 30 years in prison for doing oversight, which is our congressional responsibility. She has every right to be there. We don't have to announce ourselves. We can show up unannounced. And she, on the floor the other day, was also one of the worst members of the Republican conference, brought a resolution to not only have her censured, but to have her committee assignments stripped. And we did see 4 Republicans cross the aisle with us to say, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So that is good. And actually, you can find the names of those people. It's not a bad thing to send them a postcard at their offices, because I'm sure they're getting death threats right now. So there are some bright spots, but the only way to really make them pay is in the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately.
What's astonishing is yesterday, I think Heather Cox Richardson reported that they are now changing, nice coffee mug, by the way,
Oh, yes, thank
changing
you.
they're changing the adjectives they're using to describe the big, beautiful bill.
Oh, yeah, they're rebranding it.
The
Yes.
Working Families Tax Relief Bill. The outrageous lies are astonishing to regular people like us who are sitting at home going,
Yeah.
how is that even possible? No, so now you are still a fairly new Congresswoman, right? You're in your second term now.
It feels like I've been there for a decade based on the scars on my back, but you're right. I'm relatively new.
And you've been really, really outspoken in your opposition. So
Mhm.
as a result, your leadership has really visibly increased. So I'm curious to know how your role in Congress has evolved and
Yeah.
what are some of your goals as the leader of the Democratic caucus, and are your ideas and goals getting traction as a way forward?
I really loved this question when I saw it. Um, and I spent a lot of time this morning thinking about it. I am trying to do something that I don't see any other member doing. And that is just because I am uniquely who I am. So I'm a parent of school-age kids. There aren't that many of us. Okay. I am a former teacher. I was a coach for a while. I coached teachers in groups to professional development. And I think a lot about how I make myself a better person. And I want to, this is all related. So I'm gonna answer your question, but I need you to understand the basis from which I start. I start every day reflecting on where am I having an impact, where am I not having an impact, and really working on my self-betterment. I want to be the most effective person I can be. I want to understand psychology and behavioral science, both how I interact with the group and how other people are interacting in the group. And I understand that because I have taken the time to do that, I have become, and it feels really weird to say that, but I have become a very highly respected member of the caucus because I have taken ego out of it. I have decided I'm not going to try to work my way up within a committee. Okay. I want to be a free agent. I want to have a bigger impact across the progressive, the New Dems, and the Blue Dogs within my caucus. I want to have good relationships across the caucus. I want people to see me as someone who does my homework. I take my job seriously. I don't take myself too seriously, meaning I'm able to laugh at myself and still find the joy. I model things. I often am the one in a group that says the thing out loud of just like, look, I'm gonna tell you, don't don't tell me that we are doing all right because we didn't lose as many seats as we thought. I'm sorry. That's not a win. That's we lost. We lost the House, the Senate, and the White House, and people are going to suffer because of it. So let's look at what we did wrong. Let's not put a Band-Aid on it and say, actually, it could have been worse. The American people do not want to hear from us. It could have been worse. They don't want to hear, oh, that America is having a better recovery than other places in the world. That doesn't matter. All of those things. We have to be fearless in our humility. And I got very frustrated with an older member a couple weeks ago when we were talking about where do we go from here. And we were arguing. She said, I don't think Democrats, should ever apologize for anything. I think we need to take a playbook out of Trumpism, double down, Roy Cohn, we're never wrong, we never make a mistake. I was like, you are not reading the room. Okay. So I have something that is riddled throughout my journal. And it says, I want to speak to be understood. I want to listen to understand. Okay. So people don't see me as a player, meaning I'm not transactional. If I see someone doing good work in the caucus, whether they're in the progressive caucus or not, I go to them on the floor and I say, I saw what you did yesterday on the news. That was amazing. Or I saw you in that press conference. Or what you did in that committee was really resonant. That is both a way for people. We are all just humans. We're humans and we're beaten down as members of Congress on the Democratic side right now because everyone's telling us that we're not doing enough, even though we're working as hard as we possibly can. So I need to have eye contact and I need to let people know I see the work that they're doing. I decided to, I mean, I got asked a lot. They're like, you were the leader of the Senate in Vermont. Don't you want to work your way up and be in leadership? And I said to myself, what does that entail? That entails crisscrossing the country constantly, raising money. And that's important. And there are people that need to do that. That's not how I want to spend my energy and time. I'm grateful that there are people who will do it, like Susan Del Bene, who is the chair of the DCCC right now. She was on my flight yesterday, and we got to have a long talk about all the work that she is doing to raise money. I don't want to do that, and I don't want to be beholden to a certain line of thinking or a certain set of talking points. I am going to carry water. I'm going to be a good foot soldier in this. But I need to have that freedom to navigate within the caucus and for people to understand the only agenda I have is for us to be successful in making life better for people. And I am willing to work with anyone within the caucus who's going to do that. And so I think about the week. If I'm giving a floor speech, I think to myself, how am I going to make this 1 minute count? If I only have 1 minute, how am I going to make that count? If I only have 5 minutes in committee, how am I going to make sure that Vermonters feel seen and that they feel acknowledged for what they're going through? Or if it's in a more national spotlight, what is it that I want to say to Americans? So I break it down every time I'm in front of a group. How do I have impact? And it is in the end, a math problem. I'm going to come back to that. I start the week and end the week with thinking, what can I do to make it possible for us to win the midterms? Because without that, there is no block right now. There is no block on the system. So I want to tell you something that was really moving to me. I was in a cab the other day with some members from the Democratic caucus, and we were all going to an event together. And I talked about how I really want to change some of the rules within the caucus. So the Republicans have a rule that you may not chair a committee for more, I don't know if it's 3 terms or 4 terms, like that's it. And then you either rotate off that committee or somebody else gets to be in charge. That is how they've been able to cultivate, I put leadership in quotes, but cultivate their younger members. Democrats do not have that rule in the House. You can become a committee chair and literally sit there for 30 years, even if you're not effective. The last 8 people to die in the House and the Senate, while I've been there, have all been Democrats. Think about that. And some of them were either ranking members or in line to be chairs. So I had been saying to folks, I really want to do a push to make our rules more in line with the Republican rules around ranking members and chairs. And the people in the cab who are much more experienced members than I am, have been there longer, all turned to me and said, Becca, you're the exact right person to try to bring that rule change. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, because you are universally liked and respected in the caucus, and people understand you don't have an agenda except you want the team to work. I'm all about the team right now. And what's my part that I can play in making the team more successful? So that is what I see my role is right now. And in pushing a couple of the things that I have figured out for myself and giving people a permission structure to say those things out loud. And so I did a clip the other day, direct to camera, talking about warriors and empaths. And this might be a good place for me to talk about that. So look, we do need people who will go toe to toe with this administration in committee, on the floor, out in the streets. We need to punch back. I like actually what Gavin Newsom is doing right now in terms of saying, if you are going to steal seats in Texas, we are not going to sit by and not play in the same sandbox that you're playing in. And is it good for the country long term? No. Is it good for democracy long term? No. But in this moment, we do need to be able to punch back and not be afraid to throw elbows. But we can't just be fighters, because what we learned is that we lost a lot of support, and not just among swing voters, but in our own base. Democrats who didn't show up to vote, who said, I didn't feel listened to by this party. I didn't feel like people were thinking about my pocketbook issues, or the fact that my kid can't buy a house, or I'm drowning in student loan debt, or my health insurance is broken. And so that's what I mean by warriors and empaths, that there's no shortcut to this. We have a reputation as Democrats, whether it is warranted or not, as showing up in meetings like we're the smartest people in the room. And I want us to listen first and talk second. And, you know, some of you have heard this story if you've been at an event with me in the last couple months. I did the C-SPAN call-in show that was, it's the Democratic line, the Republican line, the independent line. You call, people are calling in from all over the country. You don't know what you're going to get. It's a wild time in the hot seat. But I picked up, it was a Democratic line. And the woman said, oh, Trump 2.0 is going to be so much worse. This is horrible. We got no guardrails. Where's the check on the system? Project 2025, this is terrible. I said, you're right. And I was like waiting for a question. And she said, well, you know, I didn't vote. I said, so you're a Democratic voter. You were telling me that you know how horrible this is going to be. So talk to me. You know, I didn't give her a hard time. I just said, like, tell me, why didn't you vote? And she said, I did not feel like the Democrats were listening to me. What I heard from the Biden administration is we've got the best growth around the world. And they said that was not speaking to my experience. So I think at our own peril, we ignore that message. And I have heard some version of that from many, many people within our own party.
It's a lack of empathy that translates into we're not doing anything.
Yeah, and look, Republicans get a pass. They're not empathetic at all. Let's be clear. That was the most craven and cruel election that we've seen in the modern age, right? But we are getting our asses kicked in the social media landscape with influencers. People are not getting their news from the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. They're not. And 52% of the public, as I think I mentioned this earlier, but if not, 52% of the American public reads at a 5th or 6th grade reading level. Another huge swath reads at a 7th or 8th grade reading level. Mm-hmm. I can be upset about that as a teacher. I can be upset about that as a mom, but it just is. That's is. So how are we communicating? How are we playing in those spaces? And how are we not letting Republicans define us?
Yeah. So let's switch over to having some folks from the audience ask some questions.
Yeah.
At this point, Dee Gish, if you are still with us from Sharon, Vermont, would you like to ask your question? Come off mute.
Sure. Thank you so much, Becca, for joining us today, and thanks to everybody else for listening and contributing. My question is, with the authoritarianism, lawlessness, cruelty, and corruption of the Trump administration, it's easy to forget about the climate emergency. But the climate crisis won't wait for the 2026 midterm elections to be solved. So what can we do now to help save our planet for future generations?
So simply put, there are steps that we are taking in Congress with the tools that we have to have the Justice Department really be hamstrung in blocking regulators from doing their jobs. And this is a bright spot. I know people have a lot of frustration at the Supreme Court. Of course, I get it. I'm still mad that Barack Obama didn't do a recess appointment, but that's another story. Look, we are having a lot of victories in the courts. I don't want you to lose sight of that. There have been hundreds and hundreds of cases that have been filed, and we are having success blocking this administration. I need us in this moment, Dee, to look also to successes that we are having because of policies that the Biden administration put into place that are my chief here in Vermont, David Scher, reminded me this morning, the 2 states with the biggest growth in solar right now, Texas and Oklahoma, because of the investments that were made, because people realize on a bottom line financial situation, it's better to be investing in those energy sources. And I need us to remember that we are part of the global community. Right now, yeah, we're in standstill, but that's not true around the globe. And it's not that I don't think the climate emergency is urgent and real. It is. And it also is one of the 2 issues that are driving young people to get involved in politics. But we can't lose sight of the fact that other countries are right now leaps and bounds ahead of us. And unfortunately, we're not the leader of the free world right now. And that makes me so deeply upset to say that. But other countries are picking up that mantle, and they're doing things. But look, we have a natural resources committee on the Dem side that is absolutely watching these people like hawks, and everything that they try to bring that is going to set us back environmentally is going to come up against the Democratic obstruction, not just in committee, but on the floor. And I have a lot of faith in the new ranking member there. His name's Jared Huffman. Definitely follow him if you are on social media about what he's doing, what that committee is doing. There are a lot of very talented, experienced people on that committee that are trying to block these efforts to roll back. But if we don't win the midterms, and I know I got to keep saying that, if we don't lose the midterms, there is no block on the destruction.
So folks are raising their hands, and there's lots of questions that we already have queued up. So, and sorry.
The other piece is that we in Congress on the Dem sides cannot let go of breaking up monopolies. I'm on the antitrust subcommittee on judiciary, and making polluters pay. Corporate greed is driving a lot of this. So didn't want to forget to mention those obvious things, but just call them out. Yeah.
So just so folks recall, we have some questions that were submitted ahead of time through the registration process. We're going to go through a few of them, but if you have questions that you want to ask Becca, I would be happy to collect them and forward them on so that you can get responses separately. But we want to keep to everyone's time limit today. So the next question comes from Tony Morgan of Essex Junction. Tony, would you mind coming off mute?
Still here?
She's here in the audience.
Hi. This is Tony, and I am writing postcards to voters as I listen to you.
Great.
As my
Excellent.
little bit that I'm doing, and help organize rallies at Five Corners. But I guess my question is, what else can we what else must we do? I've heard some talk of accelerating, like looking at civil disobedience and ways to really respond uh, to escalating awfulness.
Yes. So look, it's clear that we've had some success with the No Kings rallies that happened not just across the country, but across the globe. But we're not at that tipping point where enough people are really engaged to have a national strike. And many of us have been talking about that as civil disobedience. We don't have the numbers engaged right now for that to have an impact. Now, that being said, people ask me all the time, does it matter to show up, to protest? Yes, because when you do that, you give other people the courage to do that. I talked to this wonderful older woman in St. Albans this summer. I can't remember if it was No Kings or one of the other events that was pulled together. But she said, I've never been to a rally my entire life, never been to a political rally. She said, but I'm here today and it matters. And she said, it feels good to be out here with other people so I don't feel alone. And so, yes, I do think that the more we model that, the more people will be ready to take those steps. But I want to be really clear right now too. Like, we as white people, we as citizens who are not naturalized citizens, we have a role to play here. I am not recommending that people of color right now are out at some of these rallies, because the lawlessness of ICE and Border Patrol and in some cases local law enforcement makes me very uncomfortable. And there are certainly naturalized citizens that have been swept up. So it is up to us, when we don't have a lot of risk in doing that, we got to do it. And we got to encourage other people to do it. I just wanted to highlight that piece of it. The other thing that I want us to think about is there are two really important races coming up that I want people to be focused on. And if you can go door knock for them, I want you to do it. If you can make phone calls, if you can give, one is a governor's race in Virginia. Her name's Abigail Spanberger. She is a former colleague of mine. She is whip smart. I think that she will be the very first woman governor of Virginia in the history of the Commonwealth. If you can get down there at any time to volunteer on that campaign, do it. The other one is Mikey Sherrill. Mikey Sherrill is running for governor in New Jersey, also a colleague of mine. Again, incredibly effective, whip smart. She would be the first Democratic woman governor in New Jersey's history. Okay, so yes, we got to keep our eyes on the prize in terms of, really taking this MAGA movement down. But in the near term, those are 2 elections in November, okay? And they are really great places for us to put our energy. And they will indicate to Democrats across the country that we continue to keep winning, and that builds momentum. And we have won a bunch of special elections right now. So another easy thing that you can do for people who are on social media, I know some of you aren't, that's fine. If you are, I want you to elevate these wins, elevate the good news, and you need to be sharing and liking posts from people in your network that are doing good work, because that is also how we get the word out. It's kind of like you just got to do it on the regular. We like, we share. We like, we share. Yeah.
So we have about 5 minutes left.
That
And
goes so fast. I can't
it
believe
does.
it.
We
Yeah.
could be here for hours and we would
Yeah.
enjoy it. But I want to give you some time to provide some parting words, Becca. And I also want to thank everybody for being with us today. It is so important here in Vermont, in our little circle of political people who watch and get involved to support each other. So I just want to emphasize everything Becca said, and let's make sure we're doing it together and supporting each other here in Vermont. Election season is gearing up here. We are all starting to think about 2026, and we have some work to do as Democrats here in Vermont as well. So let's focus on taking those great ideas Becca had and talking to our neighbors and making sure that our voters feel heard in the rural parts of Vermont and in Chittenden County and everywhere that we can make a difference. And I would not be the ED of Emerge if I did not say that September 18th is our annual celebration of women in politics. We will be announcing the Cunin Award recipients very soon. You'll love it. And our keynote speaker will be Charity Clark, our Attorney General, who is also an alum. So I hope that I will see some of you there, or all of you. And in the meantime, Becca, please send us out with some more hope, because you already provided us with so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, couple things. There was one question on there that we didn't get to that I think is really important, which is how do you connect with people in your community who are not like-minded? Okay. First rule, don't lead with politics. Do not lead with issues. Okay. We have to get back to speaking with each other as Vermonters first. Okay. Or community members, right? Various communities around Vermont feel a sense of connection. So my hero in this is Katharine Hayhoe. She is an evangelical Christian climate scientist. Okay, wrap your head around that. She is always talking to people who disagree with her. And she always says, you got to find out what you have in common apart from politics. So we got to be also organizing events in our community that get back to the people of Putney, the people of Halifax, the people of Essex coming together, regardless of party, to break bread together, to be in communication with each other apart from politics. The other thing, I don't know if you know this, Lane, I don't know if we've ever really talked about it, but so, well, actually, I mentioned it at the top. I was trained as a coach. I'm a coactive coach, and you can look up the Coactive Training Institute online. They have a website there. And one of the things that I did was I went through that training in order to ask better questions, how to ask more powerful questions. And part of that is open-ended questions. Okay, it's not yes or no questions. It is giving people an opportunity to enter the conversation wherever they're at. And so one question that I often start with on the Hill, whether I'm in a bipartisan group or meeting with people who are Dem friendly, which is I say, tell me something that's bringing you joy. Large or small, let's just start there. Let's figure out what we have in common. I will ask, tell me the last time you were brave. And they're like, oh God, brave, I'm not brave. I was like, I bet you did. I bet you spoke up in a meeting when nobody else would. I bet you, reached out to somebody even though it felt really uncomfortable. I'm not talking about running into a burning building kind of, bravery, but that everyday bravery. But think about those open-ended questions and that you can start a conversation with. I want you to reflect on, what do you have agency over? What can you really control? Okay? Make a list of those things, because that is how I survive my job right now. I can control how I interact with the security guard when I come into my building in Congress every day. I can control the way I am interacting with my staff. I can control the messages that I am putting out on social media. I cannot right now, in this moment, control what is happening in Texas. What can I control? I can go to those people on the floor who are from Texas and say, thank you for everything you're doing. I know it's exhausting. I'm going to throw you a little bit of money for this, whatever it is. But what do you have agency over? What do you have control over? And put your energy there. And I heard this a few weeks ago and it really resonated with me. In this moment, all of us need to think about failing at full speed. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you don't know what's going to work out. You don't know what project is going to work out. You don't know what initiative is going to work. You don't know if you're going to be able to make these connections with people. But I want you to give it everything you got and not have that perfectionism riding you, not having that voice that says, well, you're not going to do it perfectly. I want you to fail at full speed. And in the end, probably it's going to turn out better than you thought. And the last bit of advice I have in this moment when it's so hard, do not give in to dehumanizing other people. I get very, very angry when I hear my colleagues on the floor of the House referring to their own constituents who are MAGA followers as maggots. They're not maggots. They're human beings. They made a voting decision based on a whole bunch of things that, yes, there is racism, there is sexism, there's homophobia, those things are real. But if we start adopting that language, then we are lost. And I'll give you one more example. I was at an event a few weeks ago, and this woman was very, very frustrated that a lot of young men either didn't show up to vote or voted for Trump. And she said, it's unforgivable. We cannot give them any more of our attention. I said, it's unforgivable? It's unforgivable that 18-year-olds whose brains aren't even fully formed yet made a mistake? Are you serious? And someone else said, well, we just got to cast these people out of our coalition. I said, only if you want to keep losing. So the shorthand for that in my head is, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about this person? What if I'm wrong about their motivation? Even just opening up that space of there's probably more going on here than I thought helps in those person-to-person conversations. So if I can do it with Republicans in Congress, you can do it too.
You mean I have to talk to my neighbor across the street about this?
You know what? No, Elaine, what you have to do is you need to smile and you need to wave. And if they get sick, you have to go over and say, hey, I noticed that, you haven't been able to shovel your driveway. Can I help you out? I had a very conservative Republican who lived across from me here in Brattleboro. And you know what? When he was dying of cancer, even though we disagreed on everything politically, I was over there helping them move the furniture. I was over there talking to his wife about how I could help out around the house. We can't become the thing that we abhor about the MAGA movement. We can't.
No, we can't. Becca, I can't thank you enough for being here. We like to end all of our events with gratitude. So folks, if you have gratitude to share with Becca, please do so in the chat with the hearts and all that kind of stuff. There's tons of gratitude in the chat already, and I will take the transcript of the chat and get it to Becca so that your questions are there.
Amazing.
And really, thank you everyone for taking the time today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Becca, thank you again for all you do and for representing us in Washington and for representing the best of us.
Oh, you're so kind. And thank you for all your kind words. It is the honor of my life to do this work. And the minute it doesn't feel like the honor of my life, I will resign, because as hard as it is, this is an incredible responsibility and gift that I've been given from the people of Vermont to represent them. So thank you.
We love you and thank you so much.
Appreciate it so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.